Chapter 7: The Roosevelt Enigma and the Birth of the Quiet Projects. President Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal revolutionized the relationship between government and the economy. This brought TAT into the most dangerous confrontation of its existence, the possibility of discovery by a powerful, interventionist government. FDR's Treasury Secretary, Henry Morgenthau Jr., was brilliant and relentless. He launched a deep investigation into the movement of capital during the bank crises. He quickly identified the unusual, synchronous patterns of asset purchases and the strange stability of the network of rural banks. He suspected a massive, hidden conspiracy. This led to a secret, unrecorded meeting in 1934 between the Treasury Secretary and Elias Vane, arranged by a mutual, trusted contact from the World War I-era intelligence community. In that meeting, Vane didn't deny the existence of the American Trust. Instead, he presented Morgenthau with the shadow ledger, not the key, but a demonstration of the cryptographic rigor, revealing the sheer impossibility of unraveling the structure. More importantly, Vane presented the zero inheritance protocol and the security dividend history. He showed that the money was not being used to profit or acquire political power, but to stabilize the very sectors the New Deal was now trying to save. Vane made a radical offer: coexistence and covert partnership. The deal, never written down, was this: the Treasury would cease all investigation into TAT. In return, TAT would secretly and anonymously fund 3 crucial, high-risk government projects that were too politically sensitive or financially uncertain for Congress to approve, but essential for national security. These were the quiet projects that cemented TAT's role as the unseen architect of American power. The Infrastructure Seed Fund, secret capital for the high-risk, early-stage geological surveys and land purchases for the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA, and the initial construction of the Grand Coulee Dam, massive projects that provided essential employment and power generation, but which faced crippling legal and financial opposition. The Aeronautical Research Group, a small, private grant entirely separate from the military to fund a team of physicists and engineers focused on high-speed jet propulsion and radar technology. This group, quietly based at a minor university, would become the intellectual seed crystal for America's advanced military aviation in World War II. The Manhattan Gambit, the most astonishing secret. Beginning in 1942, as the United States entered the Second World War, Vane received a single, coded request from the White House, passed through the same intermediary. It was a request for a massive, immediate, and untraceable transfer of funds, money that could not be accounted for on any wartime appropriation bill. The amount was staggering. Elias Vane, now in his late 70s, executed the final, most terrifying transaction of the trust. He quietly liquidated a significant portion of the trust's gold reserves and channeled the capital through a 3-layer network of shell companies and nonprofit research institutions. This transfer, recorded in TAT's shadow ledger under the cipher Project Chimera, represented the single largest, single-source private capital contribution to the early, crucial stages of the Manhattan Project, the race to build the atomic bomb. Book 4: The Algorithmic Handshake, 1945-1989. Chapter 8: The General and the Grid. The anonymous guardian who inherited the American Trust, TAT, from Elias Vane in 1945 was General Marcus Thorne, no relation to Augustus Thorne, a coincidence Vane found poetically appropriate. A decorated, rigid veteran of the OSS and the Pentagon's logistics machine, General Thorne brought a new sensibility, the language of systems analysis and strategic Cold War doctrine. Thorne understood that after the war, America's true competitive edge would not be in steel or oil, but in information processing and strategic infrastructure resilience. His first action was radical. He ordered a complete audit and restructuring of TAT's Tier 1 assets, selling off most of the old regional rail holdings and focusing exclusively on two critical nascent fields: the digital backbone, covert acquisition of minority stakes in the first companies building transcontinental coaxial cables, and, crucially, the companies developing the earliest electronic computing systems for commercial use. The energy shield, strategic investment in the complex new network of interstate natural gas pipelines, and the expansion of the national electric grid, ensuring robust, dispersed power generation as a countermeasure to potential Soviet nuclear strikes. The most astonishing move was in 1952. While the U.S. government was focused on the Korean War, General Thorne used TAT's reserves to create a series of independent, non-profit mathematics research institutes attached to several mid-tier universities. These institutes were entirely privately funded by TAT, with no government oversight. Their real mission was to provide guaranteed, long-term salaries to the very best minds in cryptography, logic, and early computer science, academics who would otherwise have been tempted by higher-paying defense contracts. This created a secluded intellectual sanctuary where pure research could flourish, insulated from immediate military pressure or commercial greed. This network of institutes, funded by the hidden Comstock Silver, became the wellspring for several key concepts in modern computing, including the foundational work on packet switching networks, the precursor to the Internet, and error-correcting code algorithms, decades before the Department of Defense's ARPANET initiative. Chapter 9: The Race to the Moon and the Shadow Budget. The space race became the arena for TAT's most effective and visible yet unseen contributions. In the late 1950s, the U.S. suffered embarrassing setbacks with early missile and satellite launches. President Eisenhower and later President Kennedy faced political and budgetary resistance to the colossal spending required for the Apollo program. General Thorne recognized that the Apollo program was more than a technical challenge. It was the ultimate exercise in systems integration and technological dominance. Using the lesson of the Manhattan Gambit, he executed another series of massive, untraceable injections of capital. The component guarantee. TAT provided private financial guarantees to small, high-precision engineering firms, many of them spin-offs from its own mathematics institutes, who were developing the highly sensitive microcomponents, gyroscopes, solid-state electronics, and guidance systems for NASA. This private guarantee allowed these small companies to take the massive financial risks necessary to rapidly scale production, bypassing the lengthy and bureaucratic government contracting process. The land acquisition coup. TAT shell companies secretly purchased the necessary land and established the infrastructure for critical remote tracking stations in Australia, Spain, and South America. These stations, essential for global communication with the astronauts, were then donated or leased to NASA at nominal cost, bypassing complex international negotiations and budget reviews. The true astonishing cost of getting a man on the moon was not just the $25 billion the government spent, but the speed and efficiency TAT's unconstrained capital provided. The trust acted as the accelerator that gave America the essential lead over the Soviet Union. Chapter 10: Silicon Valley's Silent Sponsor. The final, most profound act of General Thorne's tenure was the planting of the seeds of Silicon Valley. In the 1970s, as microprocessors emerged, Thorne saw the future clearly. The key to the next century was not hardware, but intellectual property and rapid iteration. He directed TAT's funding into a new class of investment, venture capital, but with a unique, non-commercial mandate. TAT created a disguised limited partnership fund, known only internally as the Fountainhead, which invested small, early-stage seed capital into dozens of nascent technology companies near Stanford and Berkeley. These investments were not for majority control, but to provide the founders with enough runway to test their ideas outside of the control of large, established corporations. The astonishing feature of these investments? the American trust did not take profits. When a startup succeeded and was acquired or went public, TAT's return was immediately transferred to the Security Dividend Network, the nonpartisan think tanks and public policy groups originally envisioned by Thorne. This continuous, self-regenerating cash flow created a massive, perpetual engine for public policy research and social stability programs that operated without any visible political or corporate affiliation. The trust was not seeking money, it was seeking technological leverage and structural resilience. The vast fortunes it helped create, the early fortunes of the pioneers of personal computing and microelectronics, were merely the side effect of its primary, century-long mission. By 1989, as the Berlin Wall fell, the American trust was the ultimate hidden entity, controlling a significant portion of America's utility infrastructure, holding substantial minority stakes in the world's most critical tech companies, and funding a vast, influential web of academic and policy institutions, all without having a single named owner, public executive, or tax-paying beneficiary. The original Comstock Silver, managed by a mathematical genius and a strategic general, had successfully engineered the rise of the digital age, securing America's dominance through pure, invisible capital architecture. The challenge for the trust's next guardian would be unprecedented. How do you maintain invisibility when the very technology you helped create, the internet and global interconnected finance, is designed to reveal everything? The final book would detail the trust's navigation of the internet era, its near discovery during the 2008 financial crisis, and the ultimate revelation of the true, benevolent intent behind its 150-year-old, $150 million silver fortune. Would you like to continue into the final modern-day section, Book V, The Great Reveal, 1989 to present? The Shipyard Shuffle. TAT provided near interest-free, collateralized loans to small, struggling shipyards in the Northwest and Gulf Coast, but with one condition. The yards had to use TAT-affiliated insurance and raw materials suppliers. This created a rapid, protected flow of capital directly into shipbuilding, an essential wartime need, without direct Treasury oversight. The result? America's industrial might ramped up with a speed and efficiency that confounded the German High Command. The official history credits American ingenuity and mobilization. The secret history reveals the invisible hand of Elias Vane, using the American trust's unassailable capital to lubricate the gears of war production, always avoiding public attention and direct government scrutiny. He viewed the war effort as the ultimate security dividend for the nation, preserving the structure by protecting the country it was designed to serve. Chapter 6. The Long Winter of the Depression, 1929 to 1939. The Roaring Twenties were a nightmare for Elias Vane. The speculative euphoria of the stock market represented everything he and Thorne had designed the trust to combat. He could not stop the mania, but he could prepare for the inevitable collapse. TAT's strategy during the 1920s was to slowly, methodically divest its portfolio of any assets tied to consumer speculation, while continuously acquiring more of the Tier 1 infrastructure backbones and, crucially, depositing vast sums in small, independent rural banks across the Midwest and South. When the Great Crash came in 1929, followed by the agonizing slide into the Depression, the American trust became the single most stable financial entity in the country. The inversion of value. TAT's contrarian anti-portfolio, gold, failed real estate, and utility debt finally paid off. While most fortunes vanished, the trust's value increased due to its carefully structured holdings. The banking lifeline. The most astonishing and informative action. When thousands of American banks failed, wiping out millions of savings accounts, the small rural banks where TAT had deposited its capital did not fail. Because TAT's deposits were vast and widely distributed, these local banks possessed the necessary cash reserves to weather the bank runs. In dozens of small towns across the country, the local banks survived for no clear reason, preserving local liquidity and preventing total economic collapse in those communities. The only explanation recorded in the local histories was conservative management or good fortune. Vane was the architect of that good fortune.